The cowboy returns to reclaim his father's land, but uncovers the widow who once stole his heart. Jake Harper rode down the familiar dirt road, his heart a mix of nostalgia and dread. The sprawling ranch lay ahead, shadows of childhood memories swirling in the dust kicked up by his horse. The laughter of carefree days echoed loudly in his mind, only to fade into the stark reality of his father's recent passing. He never expected to return, not like this. Leaving behind the dreams he chased in the cities, he felt the weight of soil and sweat pressing down on him, reminding him of his family's legacy he had all but abandoned. He dismounted and stepped onto the land he used to run wild on as a kid. Yet the sprawling fields he once thought of as endless now seemed like a cage, a thickening fog of responsibility choking the air. Burdened with debts and broken decisions left by his father, the future of the ranch teetered on the brink of corporate takeover. The insidious threat loomed ever closer, filling Jake with a sense of unease he couldn't shake. This land represented his blood, but the idea of it slipping through his fingers filled him with despair. How could he possibly protect it when he had turned his back on it? Before the tension tightened further, Jake hesitated. Memories of Sarah, the widow of his late childhood friend, flickered in and out of his consciousness like fireflies at dusk. Their teenage romance was once electric, but torn apart by misunderstandings that left scars. Now, under the burden of grief, he felt those old flames flicker once more, longing to envelop him, but he pushed them down. Love was a luxury he could hardly afford right now. Yet despite that resolve, the ghosts of the past haunted him, reminding him of what he had lost by leaving. His thoughts spiraled as he turned towards the dim lights of the local diner. Driven by an urge he didn't fully understand, he entered, alarmed by how quickly the atmosphere shifted. There she was, Sarah, radiant yet visibly worn, seated alone at a corner table. The air thickened with unspoken words and shared pain. He wanted to turn away but found himself rooted to the spot. The years melted away in an instant, and memories surged, a time when there was laughter, hope, and dreams. He saw in her eyes the reflection of all he had left behind. Just as they exchanged tentative smiles, Jake's mind raced. Love could become a distraction, a luxury he couldn't afford while fighting to save the ranch. Yet standing there, he felt his resolve tremble. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The moment lingered as Sarah tilted her head, interpreting his conflicting emotions. Could he really save his father's legacy without losing a piece of his heart? As he wrestled with the walls closing in, corporate sharks circling, his father's debts looming, he felt a surge of determination rise against a tide of uncertainty. The stakes had never felt higher, and just when he thought he had made up his mind on fighting for the land, whispers of doubts crept in, threatening to uproot everything he had fought to reclaim. Looking at Sarah, their past shimmering before him like a mirage, Jake understood the stakes were not simply about land. Could he protect his father's legacy without destroying the chance of love waiting in the wings? The storm rolled in on the horizon as Jake stood at a crossroads, the weight of the world heavy on his shoulders. He had to choose, but uncertainty gnawed at him like hungry wolves in the night, leaving him teetering on the edge of decision. A reckoning was coming, one that might demand everything from him. Jake's heart raced as he sat across from Sarah, her familiar presence both comforting and unsettling. The urge to bridge the chasm of time and unearth the connection they once had pulled at him, yet fear clawed at his insides. What if rekindling the flame of their relationship? What if any distraction derailed his mission to save the ranch? The silence between them vibrated with unspoken words. Jake's instinct urged him to dive deep into small talk, to avoid the weighty emotions hovering like storm clouds. But that seemed futile as Sarah's gentle gaze pierced through his defenses. She was a reminder that he hadn't built an impenetrable wall. Fractures remained. "Jake," she began, her voice soft as a whisper against the din of the diner. "You've grown, but I can see the struggle in your eyes." His impulse was to deny it, to shield her from the flood of responsibility consuming him. "I just Have a lot on my plate, he replied, evading the depths of his turmoil. Before he could dwell on his dissembling, she pressed on. Your father's land is your legacy, isn't it? I know how much it meant to him, to you. The words hung in the air, electrifying the tension between them. He leaned back, deliberating his response, but his thoughts were derailed by a fierce determination. That's why I'm here, he said, steely resolve creeping into his voice. I'm not ready to let anyone take it away. This land, these memories, they're all I have left. As he spoke, the weight of responsibility coalesced into a singular goal. Reclaiming the ranch became more than a duty. It transformed into a mission. Perhaps he could weave Sarah into that struggle somehow. She had a reputation for resilience, and her connection to the community might be a valuable resource. Jake pushed down the fear threatening to undermine his confidence. He needed to reconnect with what this land represented, the hope, strength, and love that had once flourished here. I could use your help, he admitted, his voice quieter, vulnerability slipping through. Sarah's expression shifted, curiosity mixed with caution. Help? What do you need? Knowledge, helping hands. There are threats on the horizon. Big banks are sniffing around, ready to snatch the ranch. I can't fight this battle alone. He sighed, suddenly aware of how exposed he had made himself. But I also don't want to drag you into my mess. The air thrummed with Sarah's contemplation, her brow furrowing as she considered his proposition. If there's a risk, then perhaps you shouldn't be pushing everyone away, Jake. You may have bigger demons to fight alone, but fighting them while isolating yourself isn't the answer. Her words stung, illuminating a truth he had buried deep. He was indeed his own worst enemy. Maybe it wasn't about plunging headfirst into singular focus on the land. Perhaps it was about acceptance, both of the land's demands and the people willing to fight alongside him. Yet the realization threw him into chaos. Could he truly allow others in, especially Sarah? The tantalizing idea of love coupled with partnership was both delicious and terrifying. It beckoned like a mirage on the horizon, testing his resolve. Would the road to reclaiming his father's legacy lead him to a far more profound battle, one against his own fears of vulnerability? As uncertainty churned within him, the looming threats mirrored his internal conflict. The stakes were rising. He needed clarity, a plan, and fast. But in this moment of reckoning, clarity felt elusive as shadows pressed at the edges of his consciousness. In this fragile moment, Jake realized he must confront more than just corporate threats. He needed to confront his own denial and fears surrounding love, partnership, and what it truly meant to reclaim not just land, but connection. And as Sarah looked at him, a silent promise formed between them, urging him to make choices that could set them both free. His thoughts tangled into a question, a nebulous yet pressing dilemma, whether he was prepared to forge both his legacy and a new beginning, despite the inherent risks involved. And just as an answer hovered in the air, a thunderous crack of lightning split the sky outside. It all felt symbolic. The storm was coming, and Jake knew it wouldn't just reshape the land. It would redefine who he was destined to become. The time had come to confront more than just land thieves. The time had come to face the truth of his heart. Would he dare to stand firm both for his father's legacy and the chance of love? Jake's mind spun like the wind that whipped through the open fields outside the diner. The weight of Sarah's words lingered, pushing against the walls he had erected to shield himself. He stared down at the table, tracing the already familiar patterns etched into the wood, each scratch a memory he could not escape. He sought the courage to transform thoughts into action, but the fear of what lay ahead was a potent sedative, holding him firmly in place. He forced himself to breathe, focusing on the ringing bell above the diner door as customers shuffled in and out, a cyclic reminder of life moving on. Even while he felt frozen in time, he could remain in this moment, savoring the bittersweet nostalgia of the past, or he could step forward into the unknown, a tumultuous path that promised both turmoil and opportunity. "Jake?" Sarah's voice broke through his reverie, threading with concern. "What will you do next?" Her question pierced the fog of indecision. A plan crystallized as he instinctively shifted his posture, channeling the confident rancher he aspired to be. It wasn't enough just to talk about saving the ranch. He needed to actively defend it. Leaning forward, he caught her gaze, linking their eyes, hoping for her unwavering support. I'll begin by rallying the community. I need to remind them what this land means to us, to remind them of the memories we built here together. Have you thought about a town meeting? It might help to rebuild that connection and gather resources. Her confidence resonated deep within him, sparking a flicker of hope. He nodded, adrenaline coursing through his veins. Planning felt invigorating, as if each intentional step lifted some burden off his shoulders. Yes, a meeting would help. I'll lay out the stakes. He paused, reaching for honesty. And the truth of my situation. If they see my sincerity, perhaps they'll stand with me. As he spoke, an internal dialogue wrestled within him. What if the community now viewed him as a failure, as a man who couldn't protect his inheritance? Each word he planned weighed heavier. Yet the thought of standing alone against the faceless corporate giants made him tremble. No, he had to confront not just the financial threats, but the judgment of those who had once watched him flourish. Do you think they'll help? Jake asked, a note of uncertainty creeping into his voice. They will if you open up to them. Trust is earned, Jake. She placed a hand on his, grounding him to the present. He felt a rush of warmth in her touch. It affirmed the urgency of what lay ahead. It was not merely about saving land. It was about reclaiming his sense of belonging. Jake's gaze held Sarah's longer than intended, a rush of emotion threatening to spill over. But as pleasant as her presence was, it was a painful reminder of the risks he faced. What if I fail? He murmured, grappling with vulnerability he had long denied. Then at least you'll know you fought for something you believe in, she replied. But holding back out of fear is the true failure. Determined, he released a long breath, his resolve being tested in a way he had never anticipated. Sarah was right. Fear of failure couldn't tie him down any longer. Legacy, love, and connection intertwined in a delicate dance. All he needed to do was engage with the rhythm. As he stepped away from the table, the diner became a canvas onto which he would paint his renewed purpose. He felt lighter, yet acutely aware of the monumental task ahead. The storm had arrived, echoing the churn of his thoughts. It was too late to avoid it. Let's set the meeting for tomorrow evening, he declared, his voice unwavering. The community would need his story, the reality of the stakes. He'd confront their doubts and rekindle the roots that held this place together. This was his battle, and he needed to stand in the light of truth, ready to confront anything that threatened the land that shaped him. But as Jake and Sarah exited the diner, uncertain whispers scuttled through the air, foreboding and indistinct. The day remained stormy, and looming questions begged to be answered. What would his neighbors think? Would Sarah stand beside him as the truths unfolded? And deep down, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that a more significant confrontation awaited him, one that would reveal not only his commitment to the ranch, but also his willingness to embrace love, or risk losing it forever. But for now, he had made a plan. Even if the winds of change blew fiercely, the battle for the ranch in his heart was just beginning. The morning sun peeked through the clouds as Jake stepped onto the porch of his family's ranch house. The air was heavy with anticipation, mingling with the scent of earth after the storm. He was confronted by the vast familiar landscape stretching before him, yet today it felt different, a stage for the unfolding drama that lay ahead. He could hear the rhythmic clanging of the windmill and the soft rustle of leaves, yet somehow the sounds felt muted by the weight of his intentions. He straightened his back, adopting a posture of confidence, even though doubt coiled tightly within him. The stakes had never felt higher. He would walk into the meeting not as a man resigned to defeat, but as a leader ready to reclaim his narrative, one defined by grit rather than fear. His mind raced with memories, past conversations with his father echoing like an untuned guitar in his head. A good cowboy knows when to stand his ground, his father would say. Those words lingered, forging a link to his heritage, a painful but powerful reminder that legacy was worth fighting for. He made his way to the barn where he could hear the familiar sound of hooves clacking against the stable floor. Each step he took bolstered his resolve. Running a hand along the weathered post, he sensed history fold into the present. Jake took a deep breath, mentally listing the points he wanted to make during the meeting. He had to connect the dots for the community, showing them that this ranch was not merely an expanse of land, but a living embodiment of memories, laughter, and shared experiences. Despite the clarity he now felt, confrontation gnawed at him. He'd have to face the whispers, doubt and judgment that might arise from his neighbors. What if they believed him unfit to lead? He could not grasp the betrayal of past sympathies or worried faces waiting for his failures. The collateral damage of his vulnerability was a gamble he was learning to play, but it still rattled him. Finding solace in routine, he grabbed a brush and began grooming Champ, his longtime horse. As he worked the bristles through the stallion's thick mane, he lost himself in his thoughts. Jake needed to muster the courage to expose his vulnerabilities before his neighbors, sharing how the burdens of the ranch threatened to crush him, yet relying on them to bring forth a communal spirit that had long since dulled. The barn doors creaked open and Sarah appeared, her silhouette framed against the strong sun. "You look deep in thought," she noted, her tone playful yet insightful. "Just thinking about the meeting. What if they don't show up? What if they don't believe in my plan?" He leaned against the stall, his doubts slipping through his words like a trickling stream. "They'll come," she reassured him with a gentle confidence. "And even if they don't believe initially, it's your truth that will matter most. Remember, a good leader stands firm in authenticity." Her faith in him fanned the flame of his determination, igniting something deep within. For the first time, he realized he could be as raw and unpolished as he needed to be. The truth he carried was a weapon, not a vulnerability, and with it, he could shatter the barriers between him and the community he once felt so distanced from. "You know," Jake said, turning serious as she approached, "I'm not just fighting for the ranch anymore. I think I'm fighting for all of us." As anticipation charged the air around them, the looming challenge felt less daunting with her beside him. But the real journey lay just ahead, fraught with its own complexities. Tomorrow evening would reveal more than just the audience's reaction. It would unveil whether he could risk his heart in the process. Jake glanced toward the horizon where the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows into the valley. The first warning of an impending storm, both literal and figurative, was feeling more palpable. The whispers of the past echoed loudest, urging him to tread carefully. What would happen if he had to confront not just his failures, but also his dreams, the emotions he had long buried? The moment drew near, and as he brushed Champ one last time, Jake felt the stirring of another revelation beneath his skin. A hint that love and fear often hinged on the same precipice. Adrenaline surged through him, intertwining with newfound purpose. The meeting might be a battlefield for the ranch's future, yet he sensed deeper stakes behind it, one that would test whether he could lead with authenticity or flee in fear. The impending struggle promised to strip away the layers he had built, revealing not only the man he had been, but the man he yearned to become. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of orange and crimson as Jake prepared to face the reckoning. The day had felt interminable, a slow march towards the moment that could alter his life permanently. He felt a wash of uncertainty, mingled with the adrenaline of impending confrontation. In just a few hours, he'd gather with the ranchers, those same faces who had both shaped his childhood and enforced his fears. Glancing towards Champ, Jake felt a fleeting sense of past camaraderie. He was no longer merely a caretaker, but stood on the precipice of leadership and change. He had spent countless hours grooming the stallion, gaining strength from the routine, but all of that felt trivial in the grand scheme of what was to come. He needed deeper insight to navigate his way through the minefield of expectations and judgments. With every passing minute, his thoughts spiraled back to his father's lessons, each more potent than the last. Failure had never been an option in their world, yet the specter of inadequacy loomed larger now. Standing on this threshold, he felt a deep resolve to show them his vision, one not just of survival, but revival. He sought clarity amid the chaos in his mind. What if he took a different approach? What if vulnerability was not a weakness, but the raw essence of his truth? It could potentially unbind not just him, but also the ranch and the people invested in it. Moments from the ranch's past flooded his memory, laughter shared during harvests, sorrow in times of loss, all reinforcing his previous view of community. Perhaps, if he showed himself as he truly was, a bundle of fears, aspirations, failures, he could stir something within them. Just then, the barn door creaked again, and this time it was his mother, her weathered hands gripping a pitcher of lemonade. "You seem lost in your thoughts, Jake," she said, peering with a blend of concern and nurturing warmth. "I'm just thinking," he replied, forcing a smile despite the tidal wave of emotions surging within. about the meeting. "Don't lose sight of your strengths," she interrupted gently. "Authenticity is sometimes the hardest thing to project, but it's also the most powerful. Speak your truth, and they will come to you." The wisdom in her words rippled through him. Was that the key? To embrace his truth instead of fearing judgment? His mind raced ahead with the realization that vulnerability could build bridges, not walls. By wearing his heart on his sleeve, he might disrupt the narrative that had confined him. With renewed strength, he began mapping out his speech in his mind, starting with his childhood memories and the significance of the ranch. But deep down, a nagging fear whispered that showcasing such authenticity could expose him to yet another level of judgment. Jake closed his eyes, visualizing the faces he would face. There was Tom, the skeptic, who had never missed an opportunity to question his competence. Enid, the cautious neighbor who frowned upon anything that threatened her conventions, was bound to scoff. But what if he turned that looming judgment into something constructive? A challenge for his true self to emerge. Vulnerable, yet defiant. The thought excited and terrified him in equal measure. As the evening approached, shadows stretched across the land, mirroring Jake's internal battle. Doubt clawed at him, but determination coursed through his veins, ready to launch him forward into the arena of fear and hope. Each heartbeat echoed like a drum, steadying his rhythm as he prepared to share a part of himself so deeply buried. The barn felt narrower, the atmosphere electric, as the first neighbor's truck pulled into the yard. He took one last look at Champ, whose steady gaze seemed to affirm his decision. The moment was arriving faster than he had imagined, a point of confluence between past and future. Jake squared his shoulders, channeled the wisdom of his heritage, and took a step forward. The time had come to face not only his audience, but the haunting specters of his choices. With one resolute breath, he embraced the imminent plunge, fueled by the notion that every whisper of doubt could be transformed into an echo of resolve. And as he walked toward the gathering crowd, he realized he was not merely fighting for the ranch or its history. He was reclaiming his voice, his truth, and the unspoken dreams that lingered just beyond the horizon. The storm beckoned, and he recognized that it was within him, ready to break free. What awaited him in that circle of watchful eyes would be both a test and an awakening. The whispers of ambition, love, and fear entwined, urging him onward toward the storm of vulnerability and possibility that would unfold. Would he emerge as the leader he aspired to be, or retreat into the shadows of doubt once more? As Jake approached the gathering crowd, the low murmur of voices enveloped him, yet the sound felt muted against the rising tide of his emotions. Each step seemed interminable, the distance to the center of the circle stretching like a mile. Doubts danced like shadows in his mind, questioning whether he was prepared for the weight of their scrutiny. He caught sight of familiar faces. Worn and weathered, they carried the stories of a shared past. Tom's skeptical eyes bore into him, while Enid stood nearby, arms crossed tightly, braced against anything that defied her expectations. With every cautious glance, they crystallized the role he had played for so long. The uncertain son, the boy who faltered under the gaze of those expecting strength. With a deep breath, Jake summoned the courage to step forward. The familiarity of the barn and its surroundings faded away, giving way to the pulsating thrum of his heart. He understood that what he was about to do was more than deliver a speech. It was the essence of his struggle, a raw revelation. Moments with his father flickered in his memory, the wisdom imparted through hard work, the value of honesty reflected in his eyes. He felt the weight of his father's legacy bearing down on him like the Texas sun at midday, but instead of withering under its heat, he let it ignite a fire within. "Thank you all for being here," Jake began, his voice carrying a tremor that betrayed his nervousness. "This ranch, it's more than just land or cattle. It's a part of me, a part of all of us. It holds our victories and our heartaches. I've grown up here, within these very fields, forged by laughter and tears." His words hung in the air, the odd combination of nostalgia and trepidation drawing in their attention. He glanced at Tom, whose posture remained defensive, then at Enid. Her expression softened for just a moment. Perhaps, he thought, vulnerability could dissolve some of the barriers he felt existed between them. Over the years, I've wrestled with expectations, my own and those imposed by others. He took another breath, feeling the weight of their gazes anchor him. But we all know that being authentic in the face of fear is what allows us to truly connect. It's time to rise beyond my past mistakes. The silence seeping into the air bore the weight of anticipation. The moment felt fragile, thick with unspoken words and emotions long stowed away. Here was his real test. Could he navigate this terrain of skepticism with transparency? With a decision, he opened the door to a piece of his heart that had always been guarded. I have failed, and it's haunted me, yet I refuse to let it define me any longer. I'm here not just to honor my father's legacy, but to create a new chapter where we can all thrive together. This ranch can be a beacon of resilience, not just for me, but for each of you too. As he spoke, a thread of belief began weaving through the collective, and he sought the connection, attempting to see beyond the skepticism in Tom's eyes, the worry etched in Enid's frown. Would they understand? Could they see his sincerity beneath the surface doubt? But before he could continue, a figure emerged from the back. It was Jess, the widow of a former rancher whom Jake had known all his life. Her presence was both unexpected and disarming, an embodiment of the vulnerabilities they avoided. The crowd shifted as she made her way forward, the tension thickening like a summer storm poised to break. "Jake," she began, a hint of hesitation in her voice. "I've known heartache, just as you have. But what you speak of, it resonates, and it's time to stop fearing our truths. We've all endured our burdens alone for too long." Jake's heart raced. Here it was, the chance to unite over shared struggles and pain, a moment where vulnerability could transform them all. But he sensed an underlying uncertainty. Would her words embolden the crowd, or would they further divide? He locked eyes with Jess, feeling the weight of her understanding. His moment of connection suddenly felt more potent than fear itself. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps this was not just about him reclaiming a legacy, but about creating a new future for everyone who had once walked the lands of their fathers. And as the first soft raindrops began to fall, mingling with the weight of his revelations, Jake understood that this was merely the beginning. Navigating this landscape of shared vulnerability would test him in ways he had never imagined. But just when he felt the tide of connection rising, Tom's voice broke through the moment, filled with challenge. "And what makes you think you can lead us, Jake? The past has its grip on us, and it might be too late for all this talk of change." The storm of confrontation loomed larger, and Jake took a deep breath, ready to engage. This would be his chance to not only fight for the ranch, but to fight for his place in the world. The heart of the storm was yet to come, and he was prepared to meet it head-on. Would he tap into the strength of this newfound support, or falter under the weight of doubt? Jake's heart thundered in his chest as Tom's challenge hung like a noose around his neck. The words felt like a personal affront, a sharp jab that cut through the fragile connection he was attempting to build. He wasn't just defending his vision for the ranch. He was confronting his own worthiness to stand among these seasoned ranchers, to lead them. "What makes me think?" Jake echoed, grounding himself as he steadied his breath. "I've spent years thinking about the legacy we need to protect and nurture, and I realized it's about more than just the land. It's about us, each and every one of you." Every word was a calculated risk, exposing him to further scrutiny. He quickly scanned the crowd. Some faces remained skeptical, their hardened expressions like shields. Yet, in a small corner, he caught a glimmer of curiosity from Enid. Maybe she was willing to listen, or perhaps she was just as afraid of change as he was. "Tom, I understand the weight of the past," Jake continued, keeping his voice steady, wrapping it in conviction. "But clinging to those memories shouldn't weigh us down. Instead, they should guide us toward growth. Look at what Jess has said. We all know heartache. We carry it like an old tool that doesn't serve us anymore." Jake felt the rush of adrenaline pushing him forward. This was more than a speech. It was his fight for empowerment, both for himself and for his community. He pointed deliberately at Tom, his voice unyielding. "Change is not easy, but it's necessary. If I'm granted this chance to lead, I can guarantee we won't just survive, but we will flourish. Together." Even as the words left his mouth, the doubts nagged at him like a persistent itch. Would they really follow him? A mere boy, crafted by failures and insecurities? But standing there, with the soft, soaking rain mingling with the dust of the earth, he felt a flicker of determination. Maybe authenticity was the breakthrough he needed. The tension was palpable, and he sensed gratitude mixed with skepticism ripple through the group. Tom's scowl deepened, but there was a hint of something else. Was it fear? Concern for the future? Jake pressed on. We have lost too much time allowing our past to dictate our future. Let's take our legacy and shape it into something new. Jess stepped closer, her eyes alive with a blend of hope and torment. You're not alone in this, Jake. We've all been waiting for someone to step up and be honest. We need your vision, and we need each other. Jake felt a surge of empowerment igniting within him. This was turning into a crucible, the forge for something undeniable. He was tired of being the figure in the shadows. He was tired of hiding. Let's support each other, he urged, looking at the faces that had once seemed so forbidding. Let's face our fears. Together, we can rebuild, not just this ranch, but ourselves. Let's redefine what it means to be family, what it means to carry our burdens and thrive because of them. Suddenly, he saw the shift in Tom's expression. A trace of emotional conflict danced beneath the surface. Could it be that doubt was yielding to curiosity? A soft rain began to pour harder, drenching them all. But it wasn't a sign of despair. It was cleansing, revitalizing. With the rain came clarity. Yet, before Jake could dwell on this potential breakthrough, another voice from the back of the crowd called out, piercing the hopeful atmosphere. And what happens when you fail again? Will you walk away like you did before? It was a young voice, heavy with accusation. Jake's pulse quickened as he recognized it as Caleb, a boy who had once looked up to him. The statement cut deeper than he could have anticipated. Could he argue against the gravity of that question? What if he did fail again? But doubt froze him momentarily, wrestling with the fervor he had tried to ignite just moments earlier. The weight of his past mistakes clenched him. Would history repeat itself? Could he find the courage to continue standing here, to face the emerging storm? Tom shifted, his eyes narrowing, now not just questioning Jake's authority, but also his resolve. Why should we believe you can lead? Tom pressed, the challenge fortifying his stance against inertia. What's in it for you? Jake's throat tightened at the implications weighing down the question. This was his moment, a crucible filled with uncertainty, and he could either retreat or forge ahead. With the crowd's attention pulling tightly on him like a lasso, he understood that the upcoming storm, both literal and figurative, demanded he confront not just Tom, but the fears within himself that had kept him captive for so long. He had to respond. He felt that warmth of the storm brewing inside him as he prepared for the response that could define everything moving forward. Would it be one of vulnerability or bravado? The choice lay dead center before him, and he was ready to seize it. Would he break under pressure, or could he finally penetrate the heart of their resistance? Jake stood in the downpour, the droplets heavy with the weight of unasked questions and unshed tears. His mind raced as he battled the tide of doubt threatening to wash away the fragile resolve he had fought to uncover. Tom's challenge echoed ominously as if mocking his very existence. What's in it for you? The question throbbed at the back of his mind, a relentless reminder of his fears. His past loomed like a specter, whispering tales of failure and regret. He had left, the very thing he was now trying to reclaim. A wave of shame washed over him, followed by fierce defiance. No, he wouldn't shrink back into the shadows. He inhaled deeply, the earthy scent of rain mixed with fertile soil filling his lungs, as if nature itself was urging him to stand firm. Let me tell you what's in it for me, he began, his voice steadier than before, buoyed by the storm around him. It's not just about the ranch or the land, it's about each of you. It's about rekindling what we've lost and forging a path forward together. Every single one of you is part of this family. Every challenge we face is an opportunity to grow. He locked eyes with Caleb, who still wore the veneer of doubt. Beneath that facade, Jake saw a flicker of yearning, perhaps even a desire to believe again. Caleb, I didn't just walk away because it was easy. I walked away because I didn't know how to be the man you needed. I ran from failure, but I learned. I've faced my demons, and I'm here to confront them, not just for myself, but for all of us. Jake's voice carried the urgency of the falling rain, intensifying with each word. The crowd shifted restlessly, a mixture of shifting loyalties and resurfacing memories swirling in the atmosphere. With every beat of thunder, Jake felt resilience grow in his core. He had the chance now, not just to reclaim a ranch, but to reclaim himself. Tom. He turned his attention back to the man, I respect the legacy you hold, but legacy doesn't mean stagnation, it means evolution. If we hold on too tightly to what has been, we may lose sight of what could be. I refuse to let fear keep us down. If I fail again, it won't be from a lack of trying. I will learn from every misstep, just as you all have learned in your lives. The challenge in Tom's eyes began to soften, but he remained silent. In that moment, Jake sensed an opening. I'm not asking for blind faith, I'm asking for an opportunity. Let's be the architects of our own future, together. We won't be weighed down by old ghosts. We'll reshape our legacy into something vibrant, something alive. A ripple of murmured agreement spread through the group, surprising even Jake. He could feel the tension start to dissolve into something akin to hope. Each face began to shift from skepticism to contemplation, as if awakening from a long slumber. Fear wasn't vanishing, it was transforming. And then, amid the palpable tension, Jake realized something critical. Transformation wasn't just about a new vision for the ranch. It was about how he viewed failure itself. He had always seen his past mistakes as chains. What if they were merely stepping stones? The rain will wash away the old, he said, glancing up momentarily to push the thoughts aside. And when it stops, we can start anew. A quiet acceptance began to settle over the gathering. They were standing at a precipice of change, and for the first time, he felt he wasn't alone. Jess moved closer yet again, a supportive presence woven into the fabric of his courage. Tell us how you'll lead, Jake. What does that look like? Tom's question emerged, no longer filled with accusation but a curiosity that reverberated throughout the crowd. Jake's heart thudded, pumping adrenaline into his limbs. He needed not just a strategy but a vision that connected them all, a plan that ignited action. What if we cultivate not just the land, but a community of resilience? Workshops for those struggling, collective projects to teach the abandoned trades. We can build our inventory of knowledge and skills just as much as we build these fences and barns. What he proposed was bigger than any singular endeavor. It was a commitment to collective growth. But even as the words flowed, he felt the pressure inside climb once more. They were going to hold him accountable, no longer just to the land, but to them. Could he deliver? Would the storm outside and within subside enough for a new day to dawn? He took a breath, readying himself for what was to come. I want to see us all rise together, not as individuals but as a family in every sense of the word. But he knew the path ahead would be fraught with deeper questions and unyielding trials. What lay beyond this moment would test not just his leadership but the depth of his resolve. The rain began to lighten, but the horizon still loomed heavy with dark clouds. Change was imminent, and Jake had begun to sense he was standing at a crossroads. And he realized suddenly the real battle was about to begin, not just for the ranch, but for his very identity. The clouds hung low, their heavy presence like a curtain holding back the tumult inside Jake. A dazzle of raindrops on the ground emerged beneath him, reflecting flickers of light. Yet his thoughts remained shrouded in fog, oscillating between possibility and fear. That nagging question, "What's in it for you?" reverberated in the silence around him, demanding an answer that swirled dangerously close to his psyche. With the crowd's attentive gaze lingering on him, he found clarity in chaos. "This isn't just talk," he addressed them, feeling the urgency of the moment. "We have a chance to rebuild our lives, but I can't do it alone. I need you alongside me, each of you bringing your strengths to the table." He needed to be the leader they wanted, but figures from his past haunted him. The essence of 20 years of mistakes weighed heavily. What if they unmasked his weaknesses instead of highlighting his growth? He shifted his attention back to Tom, who regarded him with a newfound intensity. "What do you need, Tom?" Jake asked, demanding not just presence but participation. Tom's expression hardened, his determination manifested as a rocky facade. "Prove it," Tom said, steady and unwavering. Jake's heart raced against the weight of expectation. Proving was woven into the fabric of his life. He had always felt the need to justify his existence, as if value was something to be earned rather than innately possessed. The stakes felt monumental, but burying his doubt would mean risking vulnerability, which was terrifying. "I want to show you," he declared, meeting Tom's eyes with resolute boldness. "I'll share my plans, but make no mistake, they won't be empty promises. Come tomorrow, I want us to gather here again. We'll draw a new blueprint of what this place can become together." The murmur of agreement from the gathering felt electric, but doubt still curled in Jake's chest. Internal dialogue shifted, raising questions. Could one meeting change anything? What if he faltered when the spotlight was on him? Hours later, as the rain became a distant memory and the clouds dispersed, Jake paced restlessly in his childhood home that felt both alien and achingly familiar. A perfume scent nestled itself within the timbers of the old house, dragging forth memories of warmth, laughter, and unfamiliar heartache. Perched against the kitchen counter, he replayed each confident articulation he'd made to the crowd, dissecting it for substance. He weighed promises against reality. Words could be fragile, but action carved resilience. The thought of confronting his fears sent a shiver down his spine. It wasn't just about the ranch, but about facing the choices he had made and hadn't made. Suddenly the door creaked. Jake turned to see Jess standing there, her presence instantaneously grounding. "You're ready, aren't you? You've got that fire again." The way she spoke inspired visions of the future he yearned for, but a sudden chill swept over him as he considered the knowledge lurking between them. She knew of his past, of failures, of everything that had led him back here. What would she think of his plans? "Ready? I don't know yet, but I know I can't hide," he admitted reluctantly, his voice dropping an octave. He poured a glass of water, every sip feeling like an uncertain gulp of courage. Jess stepped forward. "I believe in you. Just promise me you'll be open. Vulnerability has power." The warmth in her gaze ignited zones of passion that had laid dormant within him. Her faith reinvigorated his resolve, but shadows of doubt lingered in the periphery. What if he lost her faith as he'd lost so much else? "Tomorrow I'm taking the first step. It's the unknown ahead that frightens me the most," Jake conceded, a tremor reflecting not just fear, but the excitement of rebirth. As the night deepened, he lay in the darkness, thoughts swirling wildly. There were obstacles ahead, no doubt. Entrenched doubt still whispered in corners. And then another sensation arose from the depths, a challenge to reclaim more than a land. He couldn't escape the nagging urge to confront the past, unearthing not only aspirations but buried truths. But as the moon hung resolutely in the sky, he wondered, was he truly ready for this confrontation? When the dawn broke, would it usher in clarity or chaos? The true test of Jake's resolve loomed ominously on the horizon, and he couldn't shake the notion that perhaps, just perhaps, the confrontation would lead him somewhere he had never anticipated exploring. Would he discover not just the ranch, but what lay behind the long-locked doors of heartbreak? The sun rose slowly, casting a warm golden light over the ranch as Jake stepped outside. The night's doubts were still fresh in his mind, yet the determined rhythm of his heart propelled him forward. The promise of renewal hung in the air along with the scent of damp earth and blooming wildflowers. Today marked a pivotal day, where his dreams would confront the harsh realism of the past. Jake squared his shoulders, rooted by a sense of purpose that had eluded him for far too long. The weight of his father's legacy felt lighter now, not merely a burden, but a banner he could proudly carry. Stepping down the porch, he envisioned every rancher filing into the old barn, ready for him to share his vision, each person a vital piece in the puzzle of their shared destiny. As he walked the familiar path toward the barn, memories flooded back. Long conversations with his father, heartwarming laughter shared with friends, and the love of a community that had once flourished. This time, however, the legacy Jake was building was distinctly different. It would not be one solely defined by agricultural yields, but enveloped in authenticity, connection, and collective resilience. He wanted to show them that his return was not a retreat into the past, but a bold step into a shared future. Arriving at the barn, he saw the early morning light breaking through the wooden beams, illuminating the gathering crowd. The faces he'd faced yesterday bore the remnants of skepticism, but were softened by the morning glow. He noticed Tom standing at the edge with a contemplative expression, and beyond him, Caleb's youthful face displayed a flicker of hope, a sign that perhaps, just perhaps, the potential for understanding was burgeoning. "Thank you all for being here," Jake called, his voice steady despite the thrumming pulse of his heart. "Last night, I shared with you some of my dreams, but today isn't just about me. It's about us, what we can create together." As he spoke, he felt an internal shift. Here, standing before his friends and neighbors, he was no longer consumed by fear of who he had been. Instead, he was empowered by what he wanted to become. This ranch is our collective heritage. It's filled with echoes of laughter, memories of hard work, and a promise of brighter days ahead. We've all felt the weight of our struggles, but we also all know how it feels to rise. The crowd listened intently, and he noted subtle nods among familiar faces. The energy shifted, moving from skepticism toward curiosity, an opening that he seized with determination. "Let's lay our cards on the table," he said, his confidence built on vulnerability. "I've failed before, and I fear failing again, but the past does not dictate our future. Together, we can choose to learn, adapt, and thrive." In that moment, he realized that his authenticity resonated deeper than he could have imagined. He shared the vision of building workshops, teaching skills and trades, and harnessing their collective strengths to not only save their ranches, but to invigorate the entire community. The ranch is just the soil. We are the seeds. If we nurture one another, we can create a flourishing future. With each word, he felt a burgeoning sense of unity, an ancient bond reigniting amid shared aspirations. He glimpsed Tom's expression change, a flicker of understanding crossing his features. "And I need each of you," Jake continued, making eye contact with neighbors who held the keys to their collective fate. "To help me lead this charge, let's make this a town for those who believe in healing through community, who want to help one another grow." As his words hung in the air, he felt a wave of acceptance wash over him. The storm inside him eased, as would the turbulent relationship with his past imperfections. Vulnerability had proved to be his greatest source of strength. One by one, shy voices from the crowd began to add their support, offering ideas and suggestions. "What if we hold seasonal fairs?" called Enid, her eyes sparkling with newfound enthusiasm. "I'd help organize workdays to revive the fields," Caleb chimed in, a youthful fire smoldering beneath his innocence. The connections blossomed. Dreams began weaving together like threads in a brilliant tapestry. In that sacred barn, past wounds transformed into shared commitment. Together, they would not simply cultivate crops, they would grow the very essence of community. As the meeting wore on, dozens of hands raised in acknowledgement, pledging their time and expertise to help forge their destinies. Each promise was a tangible tether binding Jake to his neighbors, not just as a rancher, but as a community leader. He felt a wave of gratitude and understanding that this journey was not about reclaiming a legacy in isolation. It was about embracing love, partnership, and connection that started softly, blossoming into a full-formed family. Jake stepped outside the barn later that afternoon as the last glimmers of sunlight faded, feeling lightheaded and buoyant. He wasn't just the boy who turned his back on the ranch. He was becoming a man who fought to reclaim not just the land, but also his bonds. The love that once frightened him into retreat was now an anchor. And as if his heart could sense the complete transformation, he turned back to see Sarah waiting by the barn door. Her smile lit up the warm dusk, a gentle radiance that filled the space between them. The echoes of their shared past rushed back, less painful now, looking like vivid strokes on a canvas painted with time. "Jake," she said softly, her eyes sparkling with understanding, "you've changed. You've stepped into your own strength." For the first time, he truly understood the depth of that statement. He had embraced vulnerability and risk, ultimately aligning the past with the dreams shared among those he loved. "It's only the beginning," he replied, confidence threading through his words. "But today was a step. We've got a long road ahead." He extended a hand toward her. "Will you walk it with me?" With a nod and a soft smile, she took his hand, and together they looked out over the land, their land, where dreams were deeply rooted and ready for a new dawn. This was the moment Jake had waited for. Not just the reclamation of the ranch, but a reclamation of life, love, and community. The clouds had shifted, and the future shone brighter, allowing the sun to burst forth in full glory. This was his achievement, a leader grounded in authenticity, ready to build a new legacy filled with connection, courage, and undeniable love for the land and those who shared it. Now do not wait even one more second. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support matters. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. And share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Show that you are a true fan of personal overcoming stories.